Did you know that China's population reached its peak in 2022 and it started to decline for the first time in over 60 years? This marks a dramatic shift for a country that has been the world's most populous nation for centuries, with profound implications for its economy, society, and global influence. Welcome, everyone. This is the Golden Parallel, where we discuss the stories, trends, and financial insights shaping our world. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we explore news and markets across North America, Europe, and Asia. In today's episode, we'll discuss the successes and failures of Made in China 2025. This was an initiative that begun back in 2015 to transform China's manufacturing sector by prioritizing high-tech industries and shifting from a low-cost manufacturing economy to a leading innovative high-value goods economy. But before we get into that, we need to take a look at our weekly headlines throughout Asia. Last Thursday, the Japanese government passed a $250 billion economic package meant to lift wages and spur growth throughout the country. The plan is intended to support digital innovation and provide subsidies for rising energy costs. The government aims to improve the well-being of the Japanese people through this initiative. This Tuesday, China announced that they are launching an investigation into the defense minister Dong Jun for corruption. If confirmed, Dong would be the third consecutive defense minister in China to face the allegation of corruption. President Xi Jinping has intensified efforts recently to combat corruption in the military with military-focused orders this month. Last Thursday, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israel's Netanyahu and the Hamas leader. Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders condemned the ICC's actions as disgraceful and anti-Semitic, complicating ceasefire negotiations to end the conflict that's currently happening in Gaza and in Lebanon against Hezbollah. The ICC declared that there are reasonable grounds to believe both individuals intentionally deprived Gaza's civilian population of vital resources, including food and medicine. So another interesting thing here is that 6 days after this arrest warrant was released, a ceasefire was actually agreed. So that was on this Wednesday. And following that ceasefire, Israel notified the ICC that it will appeal that arrest warrant. So make of that what you will. Volkswagen announced this Wednesday that it will be exiting their Xinjiang, China operations following human rights criticisms. The company is selling its factory and a test track to a Chinese company. Volkswagen also stated that the sale is purely an economic decision, and they did not acknowledge the reports of forced labor at the factory. So an interesting thing here is that Volkswagen's actually been in China since the 1980s. So they've been there for quite some time. And they originally went in to open themselves up to the Chinese market. They thought the Chinese market would grow exponentially. They thought the consumers there would have a lot more money in the future, so they wanted to get in early. And it is also quite cheap to produce cars there. Now, with the rising tensions between the Western world and China, we're actually seeing a lot of Western companies start to become bearish on the Chinese market and be a lot more careful in how they invest in that market. So that is it for our weekly headlines. It was quite short today. Stick with us to hear about China's bold Made in 2025 plan and the economic impacts it has created. Welcome back. So back in 2015, May of 2015 actually, the Chinese Communist Party declared a major initiative, and that initiative was this Made in China 2025. The goal of this initiative was to significantly upgrade China's manufacturing sector by focusing on high-tech industries to become a global leader in producing innovative, high-value goods over just low-cost products. Now, we need a little bit of context here on Chinese manufacturing and Chinese technology in general. So China really rose in prominence in the manufacturing sphere in the 90s and early 2000s. Actually, since 2010, China has become the world leader in manufacturing. Now, a key milestone to look at there is actually in 2001 when China joined the WTO, or the World Trade Organization. So when they did that, because at that time there was a lot of unifying feelings around the world because of 9/11. The United States kind of reached across to many countries they had not previously and offered, hey, let's unite together to stop terrorism. And so China got into the World Trade Organization partially because of that, and partially because of other reasons. Right? It's quite complex. The the real world is right, but that was a major reason. America wanted them in the World Trade Organization. Another major reason was because they could produce really cheap goods. Now, when they joined in 2001, that allowed Chinese goods to be sold internationally. So, goods and services to be sold internationally. Now, why does China want to move from low cost products over to high value goods and tech, right? Why do they want to do this Made in China 2025 plan? Well, the primary reason is that if you look over the past 20 years, right, what is the number one sector that has generated wealth in the world? The answer to that is American information technology. American information technology has generated an obscene amount of wealth over the past 20 years. And I have some numbers here that I actually want to bring up. So, in VU, which is probably the most popular S&P 500 index fund, the IT sector makes up about 31.66% of the entire fund right now. The next largest sector in that fund is financials at 13.2%. But if we go back, right, if we go back 20 years to right after the dot com crash, we actually see that the IT sector was between 15 and 18% of that S&P 500, and financials were roughly 21% of the S&P 500, right? So information technology has overcome every other sector in the S&P 500 by a long shot, by an absolute long shot, almost doubling at this point. Now, Made in China 2025 broke down 10 key sectors in China that they wanted to innovate and they wanted to improve on and modernize. And those 10 key sectors are as follows. So the first one is information technology, then robotics, then green energy and green vehicles, aerospace equipment, ocean engineering and high tech ships, railway equipment, power equipment, new materials, medicine and medical devices, and then agricultural machinery. So it's quite comprehensive. And those are the things that those 10 sectors I just listed are really the 10 sectors that have created the most amount of wealth in American IT, right? I think the one that's missing there is artificial intelligence. But remember, this came out in 2015, right? Artificial intelligence wasn't really a buzzword at that time. So that's probably wrapped up in information technology, that first sector I was talking about. Now, one way to look at China's Made in 2025 plan and see if it really has worked is to take a look at their GDP and separate it out by sector, right? If this plan has really worked and they've really grown and modernized their information technology and just their manufacturing, and they're starting to produce more high value goods, we should see that reflected in the macroeconomics of their GDP. So if we take a look at that, what we actually see is that in 2015, the service industry was about half of China's economy, followed by industry around 40% and agriculture around 10%. We fast forward that to 2023. The 2024 numbers haven't really come out, right? We're in the very end of 2024, so we'll use 2023 here. What we see is actually the service sector has grown a little bit. So it's around 55% of GDP. That's followed by the industrial sector, which counts around 38%. So we've seen a little drop there. And agriculture dropped as well to 7%. So, in the macro lens of the Chinese economy, this plan really hasn't worked, right? We haven't seen a giant boom in their industry sector where a lot of information technology should really help out and drive those high value goods. We're not seeing that. And that, is pretty consistent with a lot of experts' opinions, a lot of economic experts' opinions on the Chinese economy. They really say that this Made in China 2025 plan has missed many of its goals. But there are a few that it has made, right? It's not entirely bad. It's not entirely good, right? Nothing is ever as bad or as good as it seems. That's a good way to look at life in general and things in life in general. So, what areas has China improved on? How has this Made in China 2025 plan done? Well, the first one would be lithium batteries. China is the world leader currently in creating high end lithium batteries, and that was not the case 10 years ago. EV cars, high speed rail, solar power, and then most recently, actually artificial intelligence. So, those are kind of the areas that have improved, and we can really track that to the Made in China 2025 plan. Now, they have missed a lot, and there are some interesting things that are actually going on in the world today that are kind of hampering China's ability to get into the high value goods and tech industry and space and create a lot of wealth there. If you look at EV cars, for instance, right? China produces EV cars better than anyone on the planet by a long shot. By it's not even really close. And the governments in the West that are overseeing the consumer markets that are the most profitable in the world, right? Who has the most money in the world? It's the North Americans and the Europeans, right? Those are the two economies that you want to sell your high value goods to. If you look at EV cars, for instance, America has put 100% tariff on these cars here in 2024. So, and there are similar tariffs in Europe, not in every country, but there are similar ones. And so, what we're seeing is the Western world is actually trying to stop China from essentially fully implementing this Made in China 2025 initiative and really letting it boom their economy. They're trying to push them down, so to speak. Now, an interesting part here that is going a little underreported is actually in artificial intelligence. So, a few years ago, China was seen as 5, maybe even 10 years behind the United States in AI. And back in April, there was a company called SenseTime, and they are a Chinese company, and they released an open source LLM or large language model similar to ChatGPT called SenseNova 5.0. And they reportedly claimed that this was better than OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, which would be incredible. It would mean that China is not 5 years or 10 years behind the United States in AI. They're actually level or maybe little bit behind, but really level with the United States in artificial intelligence. After that announcement, stock shares of the SenseTime Group surged more than 30%. So people do really believe, the market does believe that this model is as good as ChatGPT 4. And that's crazy, right? No one saw that coming. And there's not much really to say there, right? I think I think there's a lot in China's Made in 2025 plan that goes under the radar. I think that they have really created a lot of innovation areas in their country that are not fully accounted for when you look at just the economic output of what they've done based on that Made in China 2025 plan. Now, there are some things that the Made in China 2025 plan did not help them out with, or they did not really achieve. And that really is the semiconductor self sufficiency and dependence on foreign technology. They really wanted to get off of that, right? They wanted to be able to create their own semiconductors. They didn't want to have to rely so much on imports of high end goods from other countries. They wanted to make them themselves because of how profitable it can be, how much wealth you can really generate from this information technology. So, despite heavy investment, China's domestic semiconductor industry is really not caught up with global leaders such as the US, South Korea, and Taiwan, as well as many high tech industries still rely on foreign imports, including advanced manufacturing equipment, software, and key components. So, one thing here is that needs to be brought up is a company called ASML. So, ASML is a Dutch company that create lithography machines. Now, a lithography machine is the machine that is used to create the silicone wafer that creates a semiconductor. So, without these machines, you cannot actually create a semiconductor, and they are the world leader at making these. Now, the US government has actually stepped in and told ASML that they cannot sell certain machines to China. And they're using the reasoning that some of the parts in their machines are American parts. Anything that has an American part in it could be literally a bolt, like a tiny bolt. They cannot sell that machine to China. And ASML is following that directive, that order essentially. And remember, this is a Dutch company. It is not incorporated or even headquartered in America. Yet the American government sees this as such a vital thing to do, and that China is such a vital enemy to American technology and American wealth that they are literally willing to go across the world and tell a company that they cannot sell their machines to China. So, in my opinion, a lot of the reason why Made in China 2025 has not truly hit its goals is because the Western world is trying to stop it. They are trying to slow China down, which means that China has the ability to take a lot of wealth in just success essentially from Western countries, and they are trying to. Now, another thing that goes into this is that a lot of people do not trust Chinese products. A lot of consumers in the Western world do not trust Chinese products. I mean, have you ever seen someone walking around with a Chinese phone or a Chinese laptop? You never really see it. And that is mainly because people don't trust the technology. And it is for good reason. So China steals an estimated $600 billion worth of intellectual property from the United States every year. Yes, every year, that's how much they steal. So the fact that a lot of consumers are afraid of Chinese technology is, in my opinion, quite justified. They do not seem to have very many moral boundaries when it comes to spying and espionage and stealing. And so, yeah, those are the kind of the main reasons that China is being hampered right now. Now, China also is in the middle of a real estate crisis, so that is not helping their cause. But I really do think when they come out of that real estate crisis, they will be able to invest a lot more into high-end information technology and goods manufacturing. I don't blame China for wanting to get off low cost production and low cost manufacturing into that. Like I said, if you look at the single industry that has gained the most amount of wealth over the past 20 years and generated the most amount of cash, it is information technology. So they just want their own cut of the pie or slice of the pizza, so to speak. Thank you for watching The Golden Parallel. We post new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe to stay in the loop and comment below on what you thought about today's topic. We'll see you next time.